Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're uncovering the hidden scientific mechanics of the everyday world around us. Have you ever stopped to wonder what's actually happening when rust forms on a bike left out in the rain? Or, when a cake transforms from liquid batter into a fluffy solid in the oven? It's not magic, guys. It's literally the invisible architecture of chemistry at work.
So let's dive right in with a bit of a mystery. How do you actually know when a chemical reaction has occurred? I mean, think about it. You can't exactly see the atoms rearranging themselves, right? They're infinitesimally small. We can't just whip out a microscope and watch them swap partners to build new molecules. Instead, we have to look for macroscopic, real-world evidence to prove these invisible microscopic changes are happening. At its core, a chemical reaction is simply a process where existing bonds break and new ones form. This completely transforms the starting materials, what we call the reactants, into entirely new products with totally different properties. We're talking about a complete, fundamental transformation of matter here.
And to spot this transformation, well, like any good scientific detective, we actually rely on a specific checklist. There are 4 telltale clues left at the scene: color change, gas production, temperature change, and precipitate formation. Let's break these down one by one.
All right, clue number 1, an unexpected color change. Picture this. Shiny gray iron reacts with oxygen and water, and suddenly it turns into that flaky reddish-brown rust we all know. That dramatic shift in color tells us something fundamentally new has been created. Now, a quick side note. Simply dropping blue food coloring into a glass of water absolutely does not count. That's just a physical mix. For this to be a true chemical clue, the color change has to be the byproduct of a brand new substance forming.
That brings us to our second clue, which is gas production. You've almost certainly seen this firsthand if you've ever built a homemade papier-mâché volcano and watched it fizz over. When you mix baking soda and vinegar, that intense bubbling and fizzing, that's the visual evidence of newly created carbon dioxide gas escaping the mixture. Those bubbles are literally the breath of a chemical reaction happening right before your eyes.
Moving on, our third piece of evidence is a sudden temperature change. The surroundings will actually get unexpectedly warmer or cooler. Have you ever cracked one of those instant cold packs from a first aid kit? You snap it, the chemicals inside mix together, and bam, it's instantly freezing cold against your skin. That's because the chemical process happening inside is actively absorbing heat from its surroundings. Or conversely, think of those little pocket hand warmers that get piping hot as soon as you expose them to the air. Same idea.
Now our fourth clue is perhaps the most visually surprising of them all: the formation of a precipitate. This is basically when a solid just suddenly appears out of nowhere when 2 clear liquids are mixed. Imagine pouring 2 perfectly transparent liquids into a beaker, and in a split second, a cloudy, solid powder just materializes and sinks to the bottom. That solid? That's your precipitate, and it is a massive, undeniable sign that a chemical reaction just took place.
All right, let's shift gears to the flow of energy and ask the question, where exactly does the heat go?
Now that we've cracked those visible physical clues, we really need to dig a bit deeper. We need to investigate the invisible motive driving all of this, which is that exchange of energy. You see, absolutely every single chemical reaction involves an exchange of energy. It breaks down into 2 categories: exothermic and endothermic. Exothermic reactions actively release energy out into the world, which is exactly why a burning piece of wood or a hand warmer gives off intense heat. But endothermic reactions, they do the exact opposite. They're like little energy vacuums. Cooking an egg, for example, requires heat to be constantly absorbed in order to change the egg's chemical structure. That makes it an endothermic process.
And we actually see this exact concept playing out on a massive planetary scale every single day in biology. Take photosynthesis. That's an endothermic process that absorbs light energy from the sun to build food for plants. Then you have cellular respiration. Our bodies break down that plant food through cellular respiration, which is an exothermic process that actively releases the energy we need to, well, move, think, and survive. It's this perfect, beautifully balanced cycle of absorbing and releasing energy.
But wait, we have a pretty major paradox to solve here. If the combustion of dry leaves is a heavily exothermic reaction, meaning they are just packed with chemical energy waiting to be released, then why doesn't a pile of leaves just spontaneously burst into flames on a warm summer day?
Well, the answer to our little paradox is something called activation energy. Think of this as the required push. It's the minimum amount of energy required to actually start a chemical reaction. Because even though those leaves, chemically speaking, want to release energy by burning, the normal air temperature simply doesn't provide enough energy to snap those initial chemical bonds and get the whole thing started. They absolutely need that initial investment of energy first.
It's honestly a lot like pushing a heavy boulder up a steep hill. You sweat, you strain, you put in all this initial effort just to push it up to the crest, right? Well, that effort represents your activation energy. But the second it tips over the top, gravity takes over. It just violently rolls down the other side entirely on its own, releasing all of that built-up kinetic energy.
Applying this back to our leaves, in a forest, a single spark or a lightning strike is all it takes to effectively push that boulder over the hill for those first few dry leaves. But once they ignite, the massive heat they release provides the activation energy for the neighboring leaves, and suddenly it becomes this runaway, self-sustaining chain reaction of energy release.
Now, fortunately for us, the chemical reactions happening inside our bodies don't require dangerous sparks or intense heat to get going. And that is thanks to catalysts and enzymes. These are biological substances that perfectly lower that activation energy barrier without being consumed themselves. Think about it. If our cells actually required high heat to overcome activation energy, we would literally cook ourselves from the inside out just trying to survive. No thank you. Instead, enzymes act like a brilliant chemical shortcut. They effectively lower the height of that hill, allowing vital reactions to happen easily and quickly at our normal body temperature, all without the enzymes themselves getting used up in the process.
So, you see, chemistry really isn't just some boring list of vocabulary words in a textbook. It is literally the fundamental machinery of existence, and it is happening constantly all around you. I'll leave you with this thought to investigate on your own today. Look around you. Consider what invisible energy barriers are holding your physical world together right now. What hidden chemical reactions are unfolding this very second? Or maybe are just sitting there in perfectly stable suspense, waiting for the right spark. Keep exploring, keep observing those telltale clues, and I will catch you in the next explainer.